Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Dan Dawson Show. So today, I'm going to read you an article that backs up a video I posted. It was about Seattle dying. The city council destroying a big city. And so when I made that video, I hadn't seen any articles really or anything. It was just my observation of what I've seen going on. But today, an article came out, and it's posted by Amy Elliott. It's posted September 26, 2020, so that is today. The leading picture in is one of our Seattle City Council women, the Angry Muslim. She's giving some speech, and you see people behind her with signs that say tax big business. Well, when you overly tax big business, they tend to leave. It just is what it is, and hey. Anyway, so the title of the article is Seattle Ghost Town. More than 100 businesses closed for good. Virtual silence by City Council. Article goes like this. Seattle, Washington. Seattle downtown businesses continue to suffer the aftermath of the year's protests turned riots and COVID-19. Many have closed permanently, reflecting the devastating outcome of a downtown area that is now being called a ghost town. Think about that. According to Don Blakeney, spokesperson for the Downtown Seattle Association, deteriorating safety conditions and COVID restrictions are combining to push businesses out. Last week, the DSA sent a letter to City Hall inviting elected leaders to see what is happening on the ground and hoping they make a pledge to keep businesses safe. Blakeney said, "There hasn't been a huge reply from the City Council, to be honest." Well, surprise, surprise. Surprise, surprise. You see, because they don't care about the actual city, they care about their ideals. They don't care about the very same constituents that put them in office. They care more about their ideals. And when all you care about is ideals, at the sacrifice of people, it can only lead to disaster. You have to care more about the outcome of people than your own ideals sometimes. Especially when your ideals are just honestly loony. Article goes on to read, 2 months ago, some downtown businesses sued the city council for not keeping their neighborhoods safe for their employees and customers. The DSA reports that since March, more than 100 street-level businesses in Seattle have called it quits. One recent closing was Columbia Sportswear. Remember, I said that in an article. Once I saw Columbia Sportswear were closing, because that's like the big Seattle thing, if you haven't been here. It's kind of like the big thing because it's kind of cold and wet here most of the time. People like their outdoors. They like their hiking. So stores like Columbia, who specialize in that stuff, do really well here. I think Columbia was originally from here, was started here. So, and 2 days ago, the IGA grocery store at the corner of 3rd and Pike closed after 12 years operating at that location. In a written account, IGA store owner said economic and social and political issues.
We are mothers and fathers, sons and daughters.
Sorry about that, people. That was some stupid. They embed these little stupid ass commercials. That's what that was. I apologize. So anyway, the IGA store owner said economic and social political issues associated with doing business in the city of Seattle are ultimately the reason for closing. In an interview with King 5, owner said they feel too many people were loitering around the store for safety, and they blamed the city of Seattle for not taking action. DSA officials say COVID-19 and plummeting foot traffic have only exacerbated problems, including shoplifting and the cost of paying for security. Add that to the post-riot ghost town and graffiti latent appearance of the downtown area, and it is little wonder that business owners find it difficult to begin again. I've been down there, and it looks really, really, really bad. So it goes on to read, the lack of enthusiasm to begin anew is not surprising. Victor Matheson, professor of economics at College of the Holy Cross, looked back at the 1992 Los Angeles Rodney King riots. Matheson said economic activity in the areas affected didn't return for at least 10 years, at least not to previous levels. And that's Los Angeles. It's not Seattle. you know. Great weather, beautiful people. That's Los Angeles. Rainy weather and honestly people who like to eat. That's Seattle. He said Los Angeles riots cost almost $5 billion in economic activity measured in lost sales over 10 years. So that's not the actual cost of the riots, the cost to repair stuff. See what that is over those 10 years you had $5 billion of lost revenue. Think about that. And it's Los Angeles. Seattle can't take to lose a third of that, maybe a quarter, less than a quarter. So he goes on to say, if people don't feel safe where their businesses are, then they don't feel a need to rebuild. I understand that. It does not appear that businesses are leaving. It does appear that businesses are leaving the city in hordes, as evidenced by a slew of tweets from those departing the region. So it has some tweet things here. This is by John X. And he posted this to Twitter September 22nd. So glad I don't have to travel to Seattle for business anymore. Jackson Miloff replied saying, my company permanently closed our offices there. Employees can get relocated if they want. 83% said yes. Unfortunately, businesses closing are occurring all across the country post-riot COVID 2020, according to CNBC. Reporting of Yelp research data, 60% of businesses that had closed temporarily due to COVID have now made those closures permanent. According to Axios, the damage caused by this year's riots breaks records. With more than $1 billion in paid insurance claims, the damage from riots and looting across the United States following the death of George Floyd is estimated to be the costliest in insurance history, between $1 billion and $2 billion. An often overlooked cost of riots is the immediate funds needed to de-escalate violence and keep residents safe. Even during the early days of the protests and riots, Seattle Police Department reported that taxpayers would have expenses arising from police efforts, including $6.3 million in overtime. So if you just had the COVID, and you just had to shut everything down and there were no riots, you were already going to be losing money. Huh. All right, so she goes on to write about tourism in Seattle. Many of these departing and failing businesses relied on tourists to stay open. Seattle's a big tourist town. So people from Japan, Philippines, they all come to Seattle. So tourism plays a huge part in Seattle's economy, with nearly 40 million tourists visiting annually pre-COVID, and more than 20 million overnight visitors, likely business travelers. In 2019, more than 165,000 Seattle area jobs were supported by the tourism industry, generating direct income of $5.7 billion. So if you look what's happening here, what dude went on to say, $6 billion loss. Well, now you're also losing another $6 billion. So actually you're $12 billion in the hole now, just this year. You're going to lose out. And you extrapolate that over 10 years, it's going to be devastating. These tourism industry jobs represent 3.5% of all jobs in the state, and the economic activity supported by visitors supports a total of 5.1% of all jobs in Washington. Many of these departing and failing Seattle businesses relied on tourism to stay open. Yeah, we get it. But once the tourists again have the chance to visit Seattle, will they? Most Americans hearing of the violence and viewing it nightly on their television news will not choose to go somewhere they are not safe. Defunding the police, actually, they're calling for the abolishment of the police. Right? Abolishment, not defunding. Don't believe that defunding crap. I know the Seattle City Council member, I said in my last video that they want a 50% cut of the police, when the police are already understaffed in Seattle. I know because I go there. It's proven to lessen the safety of the citizens and visitors of a city. Despite calls on the city council to adequately finance the police to keep the downtown area safe, the council continues to go forward with its plans to defund. It's at 50%. On September 22nd, Twitter user John Huntley, a self-described political moderate, tweeted, "I'm staying out of any city that doesn't have an adequate police force. I imagine crime is going to get more frequent and bold. This will hurt Seattle's economy by way of less tourism and by businesses leaving Seattle because it's not safe to operate there. He is exactly right. And so this was tweeted by Breaking 911. Seattle City Council overrides mayor's veto of cuts to police budget. The cuts to the city or to the Seattle Police Department can proceed. And that was reported by KCPQ. I'm not sure which station that is, but yeah. Well, yeah, and that was the thing. They didn't even talk to the mayor to see why she didn't want to slice the budget. They just said no. And then they went on to say, especially that little Muslim extremist woman, whose name I won't even mention, went on to say, we want it down to 50%. We're going to cut it by 50%. Your city's going to die. People in your city are going to die. Or don't you care? No, you probably don't. It goes on to read, while protesters and rioters can choose to go home or on to the next protest, Seattle businesses are left to deal with the remnants of violence, and they continue to pay. Article goes on to ask, is Seattle safe to visit today? States if potential tourists are interested in visiting Seattle and want to know what it looks like today, one resident took to the streets to show folks the truth. And it's an embedded video. It's down in the Public Market Center where they throw the fish. You guys have all heard of that, even if you're not from Seattle, right? The long-reaching impact of the riots and unsafe downtown area will be felt for years to come. Just think about that. That's exactly what I was saying, and it's just, I was observing with my own eyes what was going on. And, you know, reading the news and hearing stuff like Amazon's leaving, Microsoft, because I know some Microsoft employees, and that's the hubbub going around right now. Over 100 businesses have left Seattle. How can you survive? COVID was bad enough, but you refused to stop the riots. Remember, the Seattle mayor called it a summer of love. A summer of love that got so bad, you have young white BLM members. Remember, what do we call BLM now? That's right, CLM, Communist Lives Matter. Showing up to your black female police chief's house, Chief Carmen Best, and threatening her to the point her neighbors had to come out and run them off with guns. Businesses are leaving. Your city's dying. Seattle City Council, what are you going to do? Are you just going to let it die? Because you hold a certain idealistic philosophy? You're not going to save the city you supposedly care so much about? No, because like whiny little brats, you have to be right. Or you're going to throw a temper tantrum. See, that's what CLM does. That's what all these idiots do. So yeah, Seattle's dying. I mean, it's in the death throes now. And as it continues on and on, of course, I'll post more and more videos. But it really kind of irks me that the Seattle City Council is remaining silent. Except for when it comes time to come out and support CLM. Ridiculous. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this episode of the Dan Dawson Show. Please remember to like and subscribe. Do what you gotta do.